I'm going to call the City Council session back into order. The first article that we have is 9B2, which I placed in the agenda, and I will read it and then I'll make comment about it. It's add the parcel of land upon which the Bob Summers Park is located to Section 5.05 of the City Charter. The green space need to be set aside as a park to be used by all the public and be protected by the charter as discussed at the November 19, 2013 meeting. Public need is to provide green space for the public. I'm asking the City Council to direct that a resolution be approved to place a referendum on the ballot in November to specifically add this parcel to 5.05 of the Charter. And co-joined with this would be Mr. Daig's comments to the degree that they're appropriate and City Council thinks they are. And backup information is included. The ordinance of 2006-33, where the land of the sewer plant was added to Section 505 of the Charter. It wasn't always in the Charter when the Charter was reconstituted. So what I am giving you here more than anything is a copy of the charter, relevant charter page, section 505, and the ordinance of 2006-23, which shows how this would have to be done. Now, I think one thing to consider here is there's a couple other items here that are somewhat related. By that, I mean, purely speaking, what I'm asking for here is this one parcel of land to be added to the charter. I know Mr. Daig wants to include additional pieces of land, which I personally have no problem with, after due consideration, be given to each one of them, which I have not done. There's a charter review requested by Council Member Pilar Turner, which is number 3, and a dog park requested by Council Member Pilar Turner. And I don't know, Mrs. Turner, whether you want to move forward on 2 or whether you want to try to think of these in concert with one another. I just don't know.
Mr. Mayor, I obviously think that they need to be worked together, and I'm a bit surprised to see it kind of preempted here with your agenda item when we had discussed this and said I did say that I would bring it back under matters. If we're not going to be considering a special election, we don't feel that this item is of any urgency to pay for a special election. I would suggest it be reviewed along with the charter review, and we look at all these other areas and we look at an overall plan for our parks.
Well, the reason I did this is, and I'll do you want to read into the record your request for a charter review, and then I'd like to comment on that? I have a problem with it.
That's fine. Got through that. The city charter was last reviewed in 2004-2005 period. Generally, reviews of charters are held every 5 years, and the cities are due for a charter review. Public need or issues to be addressed. There are several clauses in our current charter have come under discussion in the last few years requiring clarification, such as residency requirements for council candidates, the removal procedure for the city attorney, council compensation. Obviously, many of these park areas as well would be under consideration. So I'm suggesting that we prepare a resolution to establish a charter review commission, identifying the issues to be addressed, providing a deadline for recommendations to be submitted to council so that those that we pass can be placed on a ballot for referendum in November. I also suggest that attach the city charter, the National League, Model League City Charter, which this document was provided to the last Charter Review Commission. And I'd suggest that maybe council members take a look at that before coming up with any items that they would like this commission to specifically look at. And that's what I'm requesting.
Okay, well, then I'll answer your question. In 1786, we had a constitution that was promulgated for this country, and I could look in the middle drawer and tell you how many amendments are 24, 25 in that range. What I don't want to get into, and my problem would be, I don't want to get into an open charter review. We have a lot of things going on in this city, in particular the electric, the lagoon, the financing of the city. So the only way I would go for a charter review personally would be that if it was on specific reined-in issues.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. That's what I am suggesting here, is that the council identifies specific issues to be addressed. And I provided you with the minutes of the last Charter Review Commission and the establishment of that commission. And that was one of the things that clearly said that we would specify what parts of the charter that we thought needed to be reviewed or updated. And maybe the commission will come back and say, no, it's fine, but we just have them take another look at it. And we would also provide them with a deadline so that we could get their recommendations as approved by council on the referendum.
Mr. Kramer, what do you think?
I think we've got quite a full plate ahead of us, and right now going into a charter review is not something that I'd look forward to doing.
And I concur. How about you, Mr. Fletcher?
I'm not in favor of charter review at this time.
Ms. Graves?
I would want to examine only adding these parks that we've listed that are missing from our charter, that we've identified that as the issue ahead of us as far as the charter is concerned. So I think that can be resolved through some of these other things that we have planned.
That being said, I mean, I think the other three members said what I believe, that we have enough on our plate that we should deal with the parks. I don't know how we need to promulgate that, Tammy. Do we or do we not?
I don't think so at this point.
Well, I mean, the question is, we've moved from 2 to 3. And Mrs. Turner has made her case, and certainly there's issues that she's stated that could be looked at. But I think the sense of the council is that we would rather look at parks at this point. Do we need to act on number 3, or what do we need to do?
No.
Were we going to take any action on 2?
Well, I was going to go back to 2.
Okay.
Once we cleared up.
No, I presented for discussion to see if the council would like to set up this commission.
And that
Obviously,
was fair.
It does not appear that the council wishes to have a charter review, Mr. Mayor, so proceed.
Okay. Well, then I think we go back to 2, which is somewhat separate from 4, is it not, Mrs. Turner? I mean, you know, the use of
Yes,
parks.
it's definitely separate.
Okay, then we'll go back to 2, and then the question then becomes, there are 2 questions: whether the city council wants to act and put on the ballot in November. There's no reason to do it before. This parcel of land, that's the first question. And the second question is, do we want to put other parcels that Mr. Day and others would suggest? And how do we go at establishing the other parcels? It's a question.
Mr. Mayor, could I at least address the first issue? I think I still have a lot of questions. This particular area, or what area we're actually talking about, we've had the public come and say, well, make McWilliams a park, make Bob Sumner a park. Those areas are parks and are in the charter. I think we need to see a survey of what designated area is being requested, because quite frankly, I am not sure. I'd also like to know a little more about the history of this particular land, why it was not included in the charter when McWilliams and Bob Sumner were included. I would also like to know the value of this land, just so that taxpayers will know, hey, we're taking this land at this value and we're putting it for park. That needs to be disclosed. And if we consider any other, any development options, are you proposing that it be protected just as a park area? Are you specifically proposing it be protected as a dog park? I think they're very different issues.
Well, I'll answer your questions because I think they're fair questions. What I would like to do is add this plot of land, which, by the way, was deeded by McWilliams, and I think we know the year clearly. It's been a long time ago.
Once again, I'm not that sure that all that particular land was deeded by McWilliams. I'd like that clarified as well.
Okay, with that said and done, though, to answer your question, if it's okay, to answer the question, I want to add this parcel of land to the charter as being protected and used for recreation, entertainment, and so on. That's what I want to do. So I answer your question.
You answered one.
Well, on that question, do we want to take a vote on that and just have staff start drafting some type of a language and putting it together?
I do.
My other question would be, are we going to then address each piece of property individually, or are we going to have a list that voters can vote on? Like, so would this be the beginning of that list for the referendum vote in the next general election?
I think what we do is we just get a consensus that we want to have this on the ballot, and then we develop the language and the list of what we
Of
will
the
put
other-
on there.
other
with
properties.
Pieces.
I would concur with that.
Okay.
Mr. Comet, would each of those parcels have to be voted on independently to be incorporated into the charter?
Right. You have the issue of list them all. If someone finds one parcel in there they don't want to put in the deed or into the charter, they're going to vote no, so none of them go in the charter. So probably the safer thing from my standpoint would be each parcel would be a separate question. Do you want to add this parcel to the charter? Do you want to add this parcel to the charter? And so on.
Jim, would you get Mr. Gay to put together a synopsis on this specific piece of property as to what specific property was anointed by McWilliams? Because I have the same feeling that I don't think this park was part of the original McWilliams grant. I think the part on the south side of the causeway was a part of the original grant, but the north side I have questions about. Would you get him to look at that for us?
We certainly will. What we will do is take the parcel of land that is now designated as the dog park, because you have that by resolution.
Right.
Using that footprint, what we will do, the background on that, and come back and tell you how it was acquired and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Well, what
David,
about the other parcels?
And could we get a value of the land area as well?
The value.
And I realize it'll be a ballpark. I'm not asking for us to go out and hire an appraiser, but just to have, because I think the citizens need to know what they're being asked.
There's no problem with that. What about the other parcels in Mr. Daig's memo? Can we? I don't know about the value, but can we understand the history of those?
We certainly can.
And one of the things, Mr. Daig did come and see me, and I explained that, for instance, the Heritage Center and the Community Center, if those are within Pocahontas Park, which is listed, they may already be protected. So that's one thing we'd have to look at, too.
And, well, I did notice at least one property on his list was the Power Squadron that building is leased to Power Squadron. And I assume we lease the land where the Heritage Center is, and that would be prevented by incorporating it in the charter in this manner. So I think those things need to be
There is a provision.
clarified.
Yeah, Heritage Center is leased under the exception in the charter where it says it can be leased for specific purposes. So that one's okay. But if we just need to determine, instead of creating a list longer than we really need, if the structure and facility is already protected because it's in a park, then I don't really see a need in adding a particular structure to the list.
I also have a problem with all these pocket parks, as we call them, being placed on the list. Some of these parks are right next to some fairly active roadways, and if we ever need to increase the size of those roadways, we would be the whole thing would be moot question because we wouldn't be able to do anything with the property. There are some of these properties we need to selectively include, but not all of these.
You bring up a good point, because if you read the charter provision 5.05 very strictly, what it does, it says the following parks and public lands may not be sold, leased, traded, or given away. Mm-hmm. So if the city takes it for right of way, is that
it's gone forever?
Does that fit one of those definitions that you're prohibited from doing?
There's one in McCann's Park that's a little teeny, maybe 20 feet by 30 feet, and it's right on to a very active roadway. And someday we're going to need to improve that roadway, and that would preclude us from increasing the capacity on that road. So
Why don't we move forward and request staff to come through? Yeah, and Mr. to come through with a study of these park areas, and
And I'll put it back on the agenda in January, and we'll do as you suggest. I think that's the proper course.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I know we've got an awful lot of people here who are supportive of the dog park area. Would it be out of line if we could instruct staff to bring back some legislation to change the zoning of that area to Park 2?
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that either, Jay. That's a good idea.
I mean, it's coherent.
At least
it's actually Park 2 does allow you to do some leasing, but at least it designates the area as a park.
Yeah, there are more restrictions on it that would help.
Right.
Once again, that would be fine, but I'd still ask that you bring the value of that land forward so that we can, at least the public will be informed that we're taking that off potential tax rolls for the future and making that decision.
Do we need to make that in a motion, or that?
No, sir. We can bring back that information, and again, we're going to use the footprint of what is defined as the dog park by that resolution right now.
Right. Mayor, we might want to listen to the people that have been sitting here publicly so patiently, I know we've put this away until next month, but they might want to go ahead and have their say.
Craig, I think you're exactly right. Who would like to come forward? He was here first. Jim was here first. He was here during break, during lunch. He didn't even go to lunch.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for hearing us. I represent I still haven't gotten the name down, the Vero Beach Dog Exercise Area, Inc., I think it is. Is that correct? And it's a newly formed nonprofit that has a board. This was just recently granted the state charter. We have a board of about 8 people who are all extremely capable. We're very fortunate to have them, a pro bono attorney, et cetera. And so we have that in place. We've already had significant contributions, and both in-kind contributions, cash pledge, and that's probably over over $10,000. I would guess Robin Lloyd is keeping the escrow account for it, and so that's where we are in that department. We've got 1,300 petitions or thereabouts now, signatures all in favor of having our own dedicated dog park. And I'll just read you a script I wrote some time ago thinking this was going to come up. It's called Making Our Case. Vero Beach has its Riverside Park with tennis courts, fabulous art museum, 900-seat theater with Broadway productions, 300-seat children's theater, gazebo, launching ramps, large expansive green space on which boat shows, concerts, weddings, and other events can take place, Memorial Island, and a beautiful stand of live oaks under which many events hold forth. On the north side of Beachland Boulevard, however, is an unfenced field where dog lovers have been given squatters' rights on a part thereof in the so-called exercise area. It has minimal amenities for the dogs and their owners. Our less affluent neighboring towns to the north and south, Sebastian and Fort Pierce, each have their own dedicated dog parks. The Sebastian one was entirely funded by the city from their sales tax discretionary fund. Fort Pierce was largely paid for by the city via county impact fees, coupled with volunteer labor. They also had small fundraisers for organizations such as the Boy Scouts. Keep Fort Pierce Beautiful also participated. That's a much-needed one. Dog parks are the fastest-growing segment of city parks. Vero Beach is probably one of the finest humane societies in the country. That's a pretty good indicator of what dogs mean to our residents. Considering this, it seems ironic that we have no dog park. The Vero Beach Garden Club has been very supportive of helping beautify the area, which is in much need of it, and has already made several in-kind donations. Contingent upon the approval of our plan by the city, we already have a very, very generous initial pledge to start a fundraising campaign for an entirely user-subsidized dog park with absolutely no cost to the city. Vero, unfortunately, has a reputation as being a dog-unfriendly town. Let's change that. A dedicated dog park is good for the community and good for business, especially tourists and vacationers. And incidentally, we just got the blessing of the Oceanside Business Association and unanimously endorsed this. So And two of the finest hotels in the beach, Vero Beach Hotel and Spa and Casa d'Este, are both dog-friendly and allow dogs with their guests. They would, and I believe do, refer guests to this park. The dog park would be a great selling point for realtors to attract families considering a move to Vero. It is a raison d'etre for many, many seniors. Last but definitely, and as this young lady, she's moved behind me, stated a minute ago, it's the highlight of many of their days. Some that had advanced illnesses. This one lady I became friends with had a little Havanese that would come every morning religiously at 7 and play with my great big 104-pound black Labrador, and they'd roll around in the turf, and that was the highlight of her day. She just passed away recently, sadly. So I think that pretty much tells the story. If Sebastian and Fort Pierce are able to do this, and I might mention that Port St. Lucie just opened their own dog park about 2 months ago. I went down to the grand opening of that, and Fort Pierce opened one just before that, and they're both incredible parks. Port St. Lucie budgeted $186,000 for theirs, and they came in at $106,000, I think, under budget. So we're the only ones, the odd man out, so to speak, and we ask your blessing on it, and we have some wonderful people that are involved. We've already had requests for naming rights, and this is before we've even embarked on a fundraising campaign. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. You're next.
Jim. Dog Jim.
Dog Jim.
I'm dog tired.
That was Dog Jim, in case you don't know. In fact, my name is Del Ross, and I live here at Bethel Creek Drive in Vero. And the Dog Jim has pretty much covered the area that I was about to talk about. It scares me, Ms. Turner, that you mentioned more than once about, getting the value of the property in that area. Now, as a former businesswoman myself, I can understand where you're coming from. I don't disagree with you one bit. I'm surprised that we have not, in all this time, found out just where the McWilliams his gift to the city, how far it extends, what the boundaries are. I thought all this time we would have found out so that we could address people who want a dog park and tell them yay or nay or whatever. And the reason that we're all here today is that we thought that we could put or try to ask you to please put the dog park into the charter, regardless of what keep them separate from all the others. And you've already agreed, I think, that you want to study, or you think it would be appropriate to study each park individually, which I think is wonderful, too, because this particular part of land is essential, I think, and most of us think, to the welfare, present and future, of Vero Beach. Dogs, animals in general, but dogs in particular, take up about $69 billion worth of products every year. There are more companies going into the dog park, and I don't mean just Merck, just to provide for the health of animals. And it is true that I've heard people say that dogs are not welcome in Vero Beach. And I've been here 13 years, living here. And so I just ask you, and I'm trying to expand just a little bit on what Dog Park Jim said, because I understand that there are hotel owners that want to tell their customers, their people who come there, that you can bring your dogs. You can have a beautiful park to walk them in while you're here. I have spoken to people who have their boats here that come here every year with their dogs, and they're always in the park with the dogs in the late afternoon. I see them and I talk to them, and they say it's wonderful that we can have them and get a little rest off the boat and do what they ever have to do. And so it's for, I think, it's an aesthetic thing for us to be able to put fences around, raise the money for to make it more profitable and for the dogs too, to have a little exercise. A lot of dogs don't get that chance. And I go around to where I live, dogs do have the chance. We walk around the park that was built by the city for somebody by the name of Bush, who is no longer there, the Bush Park. But my dogs don't get enough of that. I mean, there's no dogs he can play with. And I'm not making this a personal issue only. I think everybody who has a dog should be able to have a place where dogs can meet his own classmates and play with them. They learn from each other too. My dog has become totally socialized. He had a very bad background. He's a rescue. He's a Labrador poodle. Very strong. He wouldn't go near a man. And I brought him to the park last January, and he's a changed dog, a completely changed dog. He goes over to people. What about the older people who come here and sit in the circles and they meet and talk to each other? They have different, how shall I say, they raise money for different reasons, to celebrate somebody's birthday, to celebrate somebody coming, to celebrate somebody going. They have a social life for older people. We don't have that here. We don't have anything that would equal coming to a park and sitting around in chairs and just talking to each other. And what they talk about, they don't talk about the city council. They talk about clothes. They talk about food. They work restaurants to go to. They talk about men. Men talk about women. Where else do you get to meet your neighbors? I never met my neighbors the first 9 years. I never met them. I stay home and I paint and whatever. Now, every day, if I don't go to the park with that dog and get to talk to my neighbors, I didn't know half of these people that are even in this room until I suddenly became social myself. I am socialized. I have no place else to go. I don't go to the museum that have how shall I say, they have events all the time for people, for raise this money, raise that money. They come in their evening gowns. They come with their necklaces or whatever. Excuse me. But here at the park, you can talk to people about taxes. Taxes, I was going to bring that up. Attorneys and magistrates and things like that. That doesn't interest us. This is a small city. We should know each other. We should get to know each other. And if a tornado comes or a hurricane comes or whatever, we help each other if you know your neighbors. I don't know them, or I didn't know them until now. I didn't know even that Mr. Turner, yes, Kramer. Mr. Kramer. I didn't know Mr. Kramer until now. You people have to understand, for us, people who don't have children, we have dogs, and we use that as an excuse to come here and meet other people. And it's important to have in every small city. This is a small city. And I love it. I love it. The people that come in their boats from wherever they come from up north, they come with their dogs now. Every day they're there. So I can't stress enough how important it is. It's an asset. In Seattle, where I lived for 7 years, we had a fabulous park with fences and beautiful views and so forth and so on. My dogs go in the water. They don't do anything in the water. They don't, because I've watched them. I have watched them. They are good dogs, and all we have to do is make sure everybody picks up after them on the grass, which we do. And I have people here who go around picking up, and I picked up other people's dogs' refuse. So I ask you to take that into consideration and fight for us, because we need you people behind us to make sure that we have some part of that park for dogs and not rented for money or whatever, because we have different ways of raising money, I'm sure, and I don't know how much a small city needs. But if you have things that are going on where you think you need a magistrate, I am with Mr. Fletcher, who says, let's just leave it to the people here. Let's not change that after 50 years of doing it this way. We don't need more attorneys. We don't need $150 an hour, magistrates. I don't want to change that subject, and I'm not going to. But I'm so adamant about dogs that I hope that my voice,
It's
Mr.
been
Kramer,
heard.
and others here will stand with me because I need your help.
It's been heard.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Who else would like to talk?
Come forward, please.
My name's Lynn Hellstrom, and I'm Dell's partner. I live Bethel Creek Drive. I don't need to reiterate what Dell has given of her heart and her emotion for animals. I, too, feel the same way. My concern is the concern as citizens here of Vero Beach that any kind of measure in regards to the area that was given for the dogs or that specific parcel of land at the dog park area stay in the parameter of being a vote by the people and for the people, not just something